Hey, so what'd you do today, Daniel? Interesting. Grace, what'd you do today? Charlotte, what did you do today? So we're talking about good story today. Very famous story. In the spring, when all of the normal people, kings, would go to war, David sent his men away and he stayed home. And one evening, David got out from his bed and walked around the roof of the palace. From the roof, he saw a woman bathing, taking a bath or a shower. The woman was very beautiful, and David sent someone to find out about her. Then he sent to get her, and she came to his house, and he slept with her, which is a word that it's called a euphemism. They didn't like actually sleep; they actually had sex, or you could say make love. I don't know if this would be love. This is more lust. Anyways, so then he sent her home. No harm, no foul. One night, nobody will ever know. Then she sent back to him and said, "I'm pregnant." So now everybody's going to find out because her husband isn't around. Her husband is at war. David stayed home. So David's like, oh, we got to figure out a way to cover this up. Okay, I'm going to send for Uriah, which was her husband's name. We're going to send for him. We're going to send for him and get him to come home. So maybe then he'll go to the house, and him and Bathsheba will sleep together. And then nobody will know. Everybody will just think Uriah's kid sure looks a lot like David. But nobody will be the wiser, right? So he sends for Uriah. And Uriah comes to the king, and the king puts on this big show like, so, how's the war going? How are all the troops? How are you? Are you okay? Boy, I'm just wanting to check on you, so thank you so much for checking in. Why don't you just go home, and you can go back to the war, in a couple of days. So he's thinking he'll go home, and he'll be with his wife. And then when she gets pregnant, they'll just think that the reason was because he came home from war. But Uriah has this thing called honor. For some reason, he just didn't feel like it was right for him to go home and to be with his wife when all the men were at war. He just didn't think it would be right for him only. It would be very unfair. So Uriah, he just spent the night out in the town, out in the courtyard. So David's like, dang it! How am I going to get this guy to go be with his wife? So he's like, okay, I'll get him drunk. So he gets Uriah to come to the palace, and he just feeds him, and he drinks lots of whatever he drinks. He gets really drunk. He still is a man of honor. And he just goes and he sleeps with all of David's men, his people in the palace, servants. So David's like, this is not going to work. How am I going to get out of this bind? So David, he knows that Uriah didn't go home, but he's thinking maybe other people won't know that. And that they'll think that they saw Uriah, so they'll just assume that he went home. But Uriah's going to know he didn't go home, and he's going to figure out his wife is pregnant. So the main person David's got to take care of now is Uriah. So he writes a note to Joab, who's the officer of the war, and he said, put Uriah in front of the line where the fighting is fiercest. Then withdraw from him so that he will be struck down and he will die. And he hands this note, kill Uriah, to Uriah, and says, take this note back to what's his name? Joab, I think was his name. Yeah, take this note back to Joab. He doesn't. So Uriah doesn't open it. He's a man of honor. He gives it to Joab. Joab reads it. Kill the guy in front of you, basically. And so that's what he does. He gets where the fighting is the fiercest, and he puts Uriah up in there, and then they all retreat, and Uriah gets killed. Okay? So then Joab sends a messenger to the king and say, tell him this is what happened. A bunch of guys got up against the wall, and actually several men, it says, some of the men of David's army fell. Moreover, Uriah the Hittite died. So not just Uriah, but other men died too. So Joab does. He does what David said. He puts him in the battle. Uriah dies. So he sends a letter back to king, and he's explaining what happened. And he said, now, to the messenger, he says, now the king's going to be really ticked off, because he's going to say, why did you put all these guys right there by the wall? You know they could shoot you with the arrows right there by the wall. Why would you put all these guys right by the wall? Come on, Joab. And when he gets upset, you just say, and Uriah is dead. And then the king won't be upset anymore. So the messenger goes to King David. He tells him, we all got by the wall, and Uriah's dead. So the king doesn't get upset with him. So there's another prophet. We've talked about several prophets there. Samuel is a prophet, right? But now, since Samuel's dead, Nathan is the new prophet. And the Lord goes to Nathan and says, I want you to go talk to David, and this is what I want you to tell him. There were two men. One was a really rich guy, and he had lots and lots of cows and sheep and donkeys. And there was a poor man, and he had only one sheep that he had bought. And he had a really special relationship with this sheep. He said, it shared his food, it drank from his cup, it even slept in his arms. So this little sheep was really, really important to this poor man. It's like all he had. So Nathan is going to tell this story to David. And the story goes on. It says, then the rich man had some company come over. And instead of killing one of his hundreds and hundreds of sheep or cows, he goes to the poor guy and takes his one sheep and he kills it. And he feeds it to his company. Alright? So Nathan goes and tells David this story. And this was David's response. The man who did this deserves to die. Oh, who would ever do such a horrible thing? Right? And it was just a story that the Lord gave to Nathan to tell David for this reason. Nathan says to David, you are the man. And David really starts to feel the weight of his sin, that he took Bathsheba, who was not his wife. He treated her like his wife. And then Uriah got killed. And David actually took Uriah's wife into the palace and made Bathsheba his own wife and killed Uriah. And David really feels the weight of his sin. And God told Nathan, and your son that you're going to have with Bathsheba is going to die. So, sure enough, the kid got sick. So David starts super praying and fasting. And 7 days later, David's been praying and fasting and that the baby will get better. And he sees all his servants are over there in the corner. They're all whispering. They're looking at him. And David's like, what's up? Tell me. And they're all totally scared. They don't want to tell him what's going on. And he asked him outright, said, did the child die? And they said, yes, he died. So then David quit praying, quit fasting, and ate. And the Lord gave him another kid, another boy, and his name was Solomon. And Solomon has an awesome, awesome name. He was also named, what was his other? It's called Jedediah, which means loved by the Lord. So, sounds like a jet-eye. Jedediah. So, since me and Mom get to name all of our grandchildren, I think we should name one of our grandkids Jedediah. Good night.